first of all, thanks very much, Gilbert, for having me back at your conference. It's always great to join you and a great group of companies. So today I'm going to be speaking about our company, Summa Silver. This is a company that I founded almost 3 years ago now, a little less than 3 years, a little over 3 years ago now, excuse me, with a focus on the United States and a focus on these high-grade, historic, very significant past producing silver projects. So of course, I know I'm going to be making forward-looking statements in this presentation, and this is always available on our website should you ever want to look at it. So here's our overview slide, and just to give you a little bit of idea, instead of talking about all of these points about what we're trying to do here. And I come from an exploration background. I'm a geologist, and I when we were putting these projects together, especially the first one, I really spent 2 years looking for something that I really wanted to devote years and a lot of hard work to, making money for our shareholders. And to put things, to give you an idea of my sense of thinking, I always liked the southwestern U.S. I always liked these old, high grade, historically prolific mining districts, because you find that when you go into these places, there's always a lot of juice left to squeeze when you do the modern work. And going back 100 plus years ago, the last time these places were seriously developed and mined, they just didn't have the tools that we now have at our fingertips today, in terms of technology, in terms of ideas, and in terms of just methods to make new discoveries. So for us, we're working on 2 projects. One is in Nevada, the other is in New Mexico. And we've drilled now both projects, and both have had some I think, very strong to world-class drill results. So we're at the point now where we don't have a resource yet, but we're working towards those. But we're getting our arms around what could be remaining at these 2 projects. So I'm gonna jump into it here now. The people slide, but I'm gonna skip to the Mandarin version. Okay, to briefly introduce the team, myself, Galen. I'm a geologist going back about 15 years or so now, a little bit more than that. Before founding NexGen before founding Summa and spending a couple years looking for projects, I was working on a lot of the drilling for NexGen Energy. Involved in a few other companies as well that I'm passionate about. Chris York, he is our VP, Vice President of Exploration. He joined us from Hecla a little over 2 years ago now, and he handles and manages and executes all of the exploration in the United States. Chris Leslie, Senior Geologist, he was one of the co-discoverers of the Blackwater gold discovery in BC, something like 8 million ounces in the proven and probable categories. Jordi Belfiore, who you might talk to if you contact the company, is our corporate development manager. And you know what? Not to go into everyone here, but long story short, we're a group of mid-career professionals, mostly geologists, who have had a lot of success in the past and now want to do it again. Okay, the cap structure. We've got 91 million shares outstanding. 121 million fully diluted. So we're in an enviable position in that we've got lots of cash on hand. This slide is a little bit dated, I see now, but we've got about $12 million of working capital, which allows us a lot of ammunition, and it allows us the ability to be able to do a lot of work in the coming months and years. Excuse me, sorry. So the next thing just on this slide is to talk about analyst coverage. Research Capital has a buy target on us of $2.50, and reach out to us anytime and we'll send that to you. And then finally, shareholders. Well, Eric Sprott is our largest shareholder. He owns 18% of the company and has been very supportive of us along the way. He's been participating in our financing since 25 cents over the last several years. And then, of course, between management, insiders, and close associates, and then the institutional and other high net worth investors, the lion's share of the stock is very tightly held. Okay, so switching gears and talking about the projects now. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Mogollon Project. And this one is perhaps we were less known about it up until just recently because it was perceived as our second project. But we've been having some very strong results here. And now it's clear that we have two very strong projects. Okay, so briefly introduce it. This was the largest historic silver producer in the state of New Mexico, with something like 16 million ounces of silver and 340,000 ounces of gold coming out of here at grades of what we think are about 298 grams per ton silver and 6 grams per ton gold, or about 800 grams per ton silver equivalent. And I've got some cliches on this slide. Like you can see, I use the words under the radar and unfinished business and multiple targets. And really, there's good reasons for that, and that this district produced silver and gold between the 1880s and 1942, and things only shut down in 1942 because that's when the U.S. went into World War II. So that's when all silver and gold mining in the United States stopped legally. Between then and the 1970s, not too much happened, but in the 1970s, the different parts of the project, the different separate claims, were put together by a geologist named John Livermore, and he did very well in Nevada, finding some of the original gold deposits for Newmont in the 1960s, some of the original Carlin-style deposits that became very, very lucrative for them. So he really liked this area. He put it all together himself, and then he drilled it, a lot of it himself. And when he drilled it himself, he drilled it out of his own pocket, and he got some very strong results that we're now following up on today and expanding today, and soon to be drilling some new targets. Okay, so far we've released results for 11 holes here, and there's 8 more pending in the lab right now that we're starting to see results for. Some numbers on the left, but not to drown everyone in a bunch of numbers. The holes I want to highlight are holes MOG 2205, 448 grams per ton silver equivalent over 31 meters. So some very strong grades over some very wide intersections in that hole. And then another hole, 429 grams per ton silver equivalent over 11.6 meters in hole 4. And then in hole 10, further down here to the south, 640 grams per ton silver equivalent over 9.9 meters. So we now know we're onto something, I think it's safe to say, that could be very significant. Switching views here and looking at what I call an underground side view. Just these pierce points are where each hole went through, where the mine horizon is. And just to highlight again, on the furthest south side of this, 10 meters at 640 grams per ton silver equivalent, this is the hole that's 448 grams per ton silver equivalent over 31 meters. But really now we've also stepped out, and there's holes pending up here, over to the left, to the right, down dip. So we've stepped out aggressively and are seeing some structures and some veins that look quite prospective. So more to come in the next couple or few weeks. So let's start zooming out now. I'm gonna zoom out. Let's keep going, and just look at a map. So this green square is just the first drilling area. But if you look at the property as a whole, there's something like 51 kilometers or 50 kilometers of cumulative vein and structure present on the property. And we're testing about only 1% of that, 500 meters of that, with the drill program that we just finished up. So it's really early days. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of good targets that we're developing now that we're going to look to test in the fall, starting in September. But what just puts this into perspective is that we went around and took samples from all these veins at surface wherever we could, and got some really compelling results. 2,000 grams per ton here, 4,000 grams per ton there, 2,000 grams per ton here, to the point where it's very clear that there's a lot of mineralization still remaining here at surface. Now, some of it's mined, true, but a lot of it we don't think is, and now we need to figure that out, and that's what we're going to be doing here over the next year or more. Okay, so that's the Mogollon Project in New Mexico. The other one I want to talk about is the Hughes Project in Nevada. This one is halfway between Reno and Las Vegas on the highway in Nevada. And Nevada is, of course, still known as the Silver State, and that's for 2 reasons. One is the Comstock lode up by Reno and Carson City, and the other is the Tonopah District. So we have the eastern half of the Tonopah District, and we've been drilling this one since 2020. We've drilled 58 holes here. with highlights like 3971 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.8 meters, 536 grams per ton silver equivalent over 18 meters, 1,529 grams per ton silver equivalent over 4.3 meters. I'm drowning you in numbers, too many numbers, but really what matters is that over a trend of 3.5 kilometers, we've drilled 4 targets, and all of them have hit grades over 1,000 grams per ton. So again, we're just figuring out, trying to get our arms around what could be remaining here. And the last thing I just want to point out on this slide is that we call it the Hughes property because it was formerly owned by Howard Hughes, who bought it in the late 60s when he was buying a lot of mining properties in Nevada and California and the West. Okay, so here's a map of the property, the project, the town of Tonopah I'm circling, with the highway running through the town, US Highway 6 and then US Highway 95, both running through the town. So we're in the town and then to the east of the town. In the next slide, I'm just going to zoom into the southwest portion, the bottom left portion in here. Okay, so again, a lot of interesting and high-grade drill results on the left. But I like to concentrate on the map on the right where, okay, well, we've drilled these 4 targets, Murray, Belmont, Mizpah, and Ruby over the 3.5 kilometers. The 2 targets on the left are targets in the old part of the district, the historic part of the district, where we're following up on things the old timers didn't get to, like parallel structures, extensions of veins. And that's where we've done most of our drilling. That's where we've had most of our success. That's where I like to say that every hole we drill there incrementally adds ounces, systematically adds ounces, excuse me. So that's really only half the story, though. The other half of the story of these 2 targets on the right, Mizpah Extension and Ruby, those are more exploration flavored targets where we're looking for an extension of the entire district. In other words, where's that next 100+ million ounce discovery? We really like the Ruby discovery where we've drilled 3 holes out here. It's about 1.5 kilometers east of the district, a bit of a wildcat step out. And all 3 holes have hit mineralization, but we haven't really quite found, the big zone yet. So that's something we're going to be chasing this summer. And here's the next slide. That is just a same view of that Ruby target, only underground. Here are the 3 holes that we've hit mineralization in, the best result being 469 grams per ton over 2 meters. But everywhere where there's a blue dot there, it's over 100 grams per ton silver equivalent. And, the veins there look really good. We're seeing some grade. The alteration looks really good. And when I say alteration, it's just geologic. This is a geologic word for there's lots of smoke around. So when we drilled those 3 holes, we didn't really know where to go next. And one of the things that geologists can do when we go out and do these things, we can do geophysical surveys. So we did that. We did a geophysical survey. This one is called IP. Not to get too far into the technical angles of it, but this green blob here is a resistivity high, and that means more quartz. Well, that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for quartz veins. So this is one of the targets that we're going to drill this summer, and there's 3 or 4 targets on the project that are compelling like this, but this is probably my favorite. It's our team's favorite. So well, why does it matter? Why do we care? Well, this is about a mile along strike from one of the most prolific silver districts in the United States. And it's never been tested before, this target. And we know there's lots of smoke and a little bit of mineralization around it. So I think this is something that, we want to test with a couple holes at least and see what's there. Take a shot. Okay, so how does Tonopah compare to some of the other famous districts that the Spanish mined in Mexico going back 500 years? Well, Tonopah produced over a length of 4 kilometers and 175 million ounces of silver. Well, if you compare that to Guanajuato, Sandy Mass, Pachuca, a lot more strike length, up to 18 kilometers, and of course, many more ounces produced. So, that makes sense intuitively. While I'm just representing that mined length with the length of this white bar here on the bottom half of the slide, where if you take Tonopah at 4 kilometers, add 1.3 kilometers onto it, where we've started to hit at the Ruby discovery, and even let it run, well, it fits in quite nicely with how big these districts can get when they get to be really, truly world-class. So for me, that's really what inspired me about this district when we were first acquiring the project and staking claims down in Nevada. And finally, well, how do our projects compare to some of the more advanced examples, or say our more advanced peers, much more advanced peers? Well, on a footprint scale, it's very similar. These districts and deposits are very similar to what companies like Silvercrest is working on, what First Majestic is working on at Sandy Mass, and what Vizsla is working on in Panuco. And we've got a lot of work to do to get to those levels. But for me, as a geologist, as an exploration person, I see the potential very, very clearly. So I think I'd like to stop it there. And thanks everyone for your time.
Hi, Galen. Thank you for your update here. So there's a few questions here from the audience. The first one is coming from Satari, and he's asking, what's the significance of your recent results in the news? I think he's talking about the drilling results in the past month or two.
Yeah, so we've been releasing some results and some photos of good looking core. That was our most recent news, was the photos of the good looking core. So what we're seeing in that core, to start with the visual results, because we don't have the assays back yet, what we're seeing in the significance of that core is very wide veins, very rarely wide veins, that show us some good silver and gold mineralization that we can see. We don't know the assays yet. But we can see that there's going to be zones that are pretty strong. And typically, to put it into perspective a little bit, if we show a vein that's, say 20 meters wide, just to keep it simple, on average, the veins are 66% mineralized. So with that in mind, if it's 20 meters wide, you're looking at probably 12 meters of good mineralization.
Cool. The second question coming from Sishan is asking more about macro. Do you follow the silver price? It dropped a bit recently, but do you think it will rally back to the level that we have seen in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I do. I very much do. I think we're coming into potentially a perfect storm for especially silver, but precious metals in general. Look at what's going on with the banking crisis. If you believe some of the news reports, everything's fine and everything's taken care of, but every week there's a new bank. It started with Silicon Valley, Signature, and then just over the weekend with Credit Suisse going down in flames. I mean, that's a big bank that was a financial powerhouse since what, 1856 or something. So it's that's something that worries me personally, and I think that's probably there's going to be a lot more to play out there. At one side of the equation. The other side of the equation being the demand, for silver in new things like solar panels and EVs over the next, 5 years. Looking at the International Energy Agency projections, you might need 100, 200, 300, 400 million more ounces of silver production a year. Well, the market's only, say, 1 billion ounces every year of mined silver. Now, where is it all going to come from? I don't know, but I think it only means one thing for silver price.
Yes, and another question coming from How D here. He's asking about your growth strategy. Will it be just organic growth, or you have some new pipeline acquisitions that you're thinking of?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And organic growth is great because we're good at exploration and we've been successful at it, but it takes time. So I'm always looking for acquisitions or mergers or business combinations. And we're always talking to other companies and signing CAs and seeing what we can do. So I'm fairly hungry for something like that.
Great. So one last question is from Sylvie Cow. He's asking, how can investors stay informed about the latest development at your company? Obviously from your website and news, but what are the best sources of information of assessing the company's potentials? So I think you can talk about how, as an investor, how do you assess your let's say Summa Silver, will it be undervalued? Like, does it compare to your peers in terms of market value? What's your share on that one?
That I think that speaks to the heart of why I look at any of these companies, because there's many mining companies that are in the TSXV and they all sound very similar, right? But for me, when I'm looking at these things in my investments, I look at the strength of management. I look at how strong the results are, and you have to do a lot of homework to figure out if something's good or something's bad, right? I can't tell you. You kind of got to figure it out. But when you're looking at grades that are, I don't know, hundreds to thousands of grams per ton, and you look at our market cap that's in the 50s of millions, somewhere around 55 or 57 million today. Take a company that like Silvercrest, or like a good one's Visa Silver, my good friend runs. Silvercrest has a market cap of I think around $1 billion off the top of my head. Visa Silver's at 400 million. We're at 50 million. They're more advanced than us, but that's what we're working towards here with the work that we're doing.
Great. Thank you, Galen, for very insightful updates about Summa Silver's plan this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Gilbert, and thanks everyone.